Welcome back to the Lift Free and Diet Hard podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Coates. Join me along with industry leaders and friends on a quest to get more people through the gym door and eating and living healthier. Join me where evidence meets empathy while rejecting fitness industry fads and extremism. Let's begin. Dr. John Rusin, fresh on his tour to promote your brand new book. Congratulations, Pain-Free Performance. Well-known figure in our industry. I was reading you on T Nation long before I was writing for T Nation. Obviously, you're a founder of the Pain-Free Performance Special Certification and all of the stuff that has come out of that. A doctor of physical therapy, industry icon. Welcome. Great to have you.
Andrew, it's good to be here. And I like to think that I would be here with you even if the book wasn't on a tour right now, because you're one of the guys that I listen to. So it's always a pleasure to be on here with you.
Well, I would have made my way to you, but considering that I'm thoughtful about this, but if I've got someone who's got a book out, it's great to have you on to give you an extra boost. So we'll talk a little bit about it. So on theme, let's say someone wants to live pain-free. A little bit of preamble. There's some argument in our industry whether or not pain, injury is normal, and your language has always been pain-free performance. Some people even almost chafe at that, but setting that bullshit aside, let's say they're willing to do the work. What matters most in training to be pain-free?
I think being able to have an individualized approach at your distinct anatomy, your distinct biomechanics, your body shape, your body size, and also the types of stress that you're under, not only in the gym, but and out. And we look at this as an individualized approach to training. And every trainer out there goes, yeah, no shit, that's what we should be doing with people. But as we've both seen, that is probably the polar opposite of what a vast majority of trainers, both online and in person, are doing with their clients today. And it turns into not pain-free performance, it turns into painful performance, and it ends up with people back on the couch and not even active, and a bad taste in their mouth and what they think they need to do in order to just be healthy. So I think that pain-free performance, in essence, is doing no harm, but then also trying to put individualized pieces together so we can make something out of this, so we can get some momentum, so we can go decades into having a physical practice that can set us up for long-term success.
All right. So let's make that more granular. Let's say you've got the person who, obviously there's so many different aspects to different kinds of injuries, but you've got that person again who, let's say they're already in pain.
Yeah.
Now, where do you start with that person who's probably fearful about the pain they're actually experiencing?
Yeah, well, so the first thing is that we need to differentiate between a clinical pain source, like, hey, let's go get some advanced diagnostics. Let's get you over to a physical therapist. So let's see your primary physician. Or subclinical pain management is what we're in the business of. Hey, you have aches and pains and old injuries. You have some chronic shit that is flaring up, but you're still active. You'd be training otherwise if you weren't working with me, but we just need to figure out a better solution. So at Pain-Free Performance, we look at essentially going through the 6 foundational movement patterns and being able to screen and assess them for their capabilities that day, but also for the individuality of maybe why we be running into some roadblocks in terms of whether it's a pain response from training, whether it's a pain response from something external to training, or whether it's something that we do essentially need to refer out to. But usually like 90 to 95% of people can simply be helped by just going through an auditing process of looking at the quality of their patterns and then looking to make tools available for them to simply like de-escalate their pain response and get them moving. Because as we know, getting them moving, eliciting a desired response in the gym and being able to simply train, that is going to be liberating for these people that have these shackles built up in their minds to say that, hey, I can't do this stuff anymore because I'm XYZ diagnosis that they've heard from other providers.
So we're talking about managing the load that they're experiencing for a certain exercise. We're talking about modifying, range of motion. Let's say you've got someone who has limited overhead mobility, or there's pain in that. It's going from a straight overhead press to something like a landmine press. Are there any other aspects?
I'd go even deeper than that, though. I'll go even deeper. You use the word exercise. I think that's where most people go wrong when they're having pain in the gym. They go, I need to do this specific exercise in order to build muscle, to get strong, to be able to feel good, like my ego can get stroked. And when we take exercise out of the equation, because there's a myriad of different exercises that we can have success with, and we start put in foundational movement patterns and find success where they can be more pain-free that day, utilizing a different progression plan or a regression plan, then they're successful. But I think it starts off with no exercises are mandatory, movement patterns are mandatory, but then above and beyond that, there are movement patterns that aren't just textbook proper form. That doesn't exist. We need to actually utilize tools to be able to say, hey, you are different than I am in terms of just what you've come in with. And we need to be training differently. It's going to look different, right and left if you have two people, but that's okay. We can look different doing the same movement pattern or the same exercise. And as long as we're feeling good and as long as we're functioning well, and as long as we're progressing and we're not causing more pain, then that's going to be a huge win. But there are no distinct exercises that I deem mandatory for really any goal out there, no matter your sport or no matter your training focus.
Unless you're literally competing in a sport that requires that exercise, and that's it.
I would even say with those athletes that I do manage, I do have an in-season protocol, a preseason protocol, and then an off-season. An off-season is anywhere from 7 to 9 months, meaning that they're going to train for their unique body with different variations that we can get them healthy, we can get them resilient, we can get them withstanding the stress and the load that we're placing upon them. We're callousing their system in different ways. And then, of course, if you're going to squat, bench, and dead as a power lifter, we're going to get you into your best possible position to compete at a high level. But we're going to specialize that just as I'd specialize any other field or court sport athlete in a preseason and then an in-season protocol. So even those, they're no exception to the rule.
You said
This episode is brought to you by Macros First. I've always struggled with nutrition tracking apps, even the slightest hassle or friction, and it breaks my habit. That changed with Macros First. When I tried it, I told my friend, the founder, Jacob, quote, this is, well, let's just call it a certain other app on steroids. It's the easiest app to use, and it has a free barcode scanner, which if you use tracking apps, you know this is a really big deal. I recommend Macros First to all my clients and friends, and even had them sponsor my 2024 conference. Here's an example feature that I love. The verified food database. Remember using other apps and searching for a food only to find 10 to 50 similar options with different macros, not knowing which one to pick. This kind of friction is the shit that made me quit tracking altogether. Macros First, every single food item in the database, over 3 million of them, is human verified. No junk entries, so you can trust the numbers. Plus, that free barcode scanner makes logging faster. And if the barcode doesn't turn anything up, just point your camera at the nutrition label and Macros First will extract all the nutrition info instantly. All this just makes tracking easier. And while Macros First's premium version is incredible for any user, the basic version, which is nowhere near basic, is free to use. So you can go to either the Apple Store or Google Play to download.
there's no perfect form. And I explicitly agree. In fact, I like that. I think that's an important message. But take us deeper on that, especially the people who, I mean, the audience is definitely a lot of enthusiasts. There are coaches here. But for the enthusiast that is thinking, well, all the time with the clients I work with, send videos and they're worried that the form is not perfect. But break this down for me. Why, there is no such thing as perfect form.
We've been taught the opposite, and I think this is why it's such a hard construct to be able to understand for coaches and clients alike. We've all learned from a textbook, some of us in the university, some of us in our CPT, and it says, hey, this is how you squat. Feet shoulder width apart, slight toes out, only go to parallel, and be able to have a bar on your back. That is a squat. And then all of a sudden, everyone goes, okay, well, this is how I should look squatting. And then I would say 70 to 80% of people can't squat that way. And they feel like they're the problem. They're the ones that are broken because they can't smash this round peg into a square hole. But really what we're talking about is being able to train correctly for your body. This is a pretty deep topic, but the topic of anthropometry, basically what is the shape, the size, the angulation, and the structure of the things that we cannot out-train. We're talking about at the deepest of levels, the skeletal structure. So I have a different hip type than you have. And even on me, my right hip is different than my left hip, anywhere from 20 to 30% in terms of its angle, its size, its depth, its orientation. And all of a sudden we're like, holy shit, if there's an infinite amount of different anthropometry, different bone shapes and sizes and structures, and we have over 270 bones in the body, how the hell are we all supposed to deadlift a bar off the ground out of a conventional stance from 8.75 inches And how are we all supposed to squat to only parallel depth out of that cookie cutter squat? And how are we all supposed to bench press with the perfect quote unquote form that we learned from the best powerlifters on earth? It just doesn't work that way. And I think that when we cut the bullshit and we say that, hey, we all are unique and we need to train uniquely for our body, the best two things that we can look at is, hey, does it feel good to you that you're training in this position or in this way? And also, does it defy or does it follow biomechanical principles of centration, of stability, of neutrality, things that we just know to be really good for prevention and performance alike?
You make me think of my friends Melody Schoenfeld, maybe 5'1" of her if she's lucky, and Lee Boyce, our fellow T Nation writer, at 6'4". They've done a lot of work together talking about, again, anthropometry and the difference in limb lengths and the way that performance is. They could not be more polar opposite in terms of the way they present. And it's fun to watch them actually do seminars together at their different heights, right? You also mentioned lifestyle very early on. And I love the concept. Occasionally I'll mention this, allostatic load, which is the entirety of all of the stress that we experience, not just the physical stress from exercise and training, the emotional stress, life stress, relationship, work, you name it, right? And there's two components to that. How's our recovery and how good that is? And then what's the total cumulative stress? Do you want to take that a bit further in how that impacts pain?
Absolutely. There is a section in Pain-Free Performance book that I spent a ton of time actually unpacking, because that's one of the questions that we get all the time. It's like, is good form going to be protective? Is bad form dangerous? And it's not a yes or a no answer. There's always the nuance that you can actually start to unpack when you have a 600-page textbook. But there's a concept called the zone of neutrality, specific to the spine, the hips, and the shoulder that we teach at Pain-Free Performance. And the zone of neutrality is basically like, hey, the further you get away from that quote unquote perfect form in terms of your spinal position and spinal alignment, likely the more likely you are to be injured in that area, especially under load and exceeding loads. And then most of the conversations stop there. It's like, okay, if I have bad form, I'm more likely to be hurt. Not all of a sudden, it doesn't work that way. So we break it down and we have actually 20 distinct variables that could alter how much buffering zone that you have in your neutral zone for spinal, hip, and shoulder centration and stability. And all of a sudden, we're talking about things like, how did you sleep not only last night, but your sleep cycles over the last 7 days or 30 days? What has your nutrition been like? What is your stress zone in terms of work, and what's your stress load coming into that workout? What's it been for the last 7 days? And then we're looking at principles of just motor skill acquisition. How novel is this movement for you today? Usually novel plus high loads is going to put you into a more vulnerable position versus something that you are very proficient at and more moderate or lower loads. So there's all these different variables that make every single training session unique. And every single training session, I do think, with all these variables, needs to be respected and needs to be varied in terms of your ability to go in and push intelligently that day based on the realities, not just what's on your program or what's in your heart to actually ego drive. So when we start thinking about this is why some of the best power lifters in the world, they have form that goes, oh shit, that looks like it broke every biomechanical principle that I learned in school, but they're still able to withstand that stress because they have high skill, high recovery, high strength, and high abilities to withstand that stress. And it's like, man, that's not the average person out there, but I think that looking at some of these outliers, it is a good ability to create the spectrum of where you may fall. Most of us fall right in the middle. We want to work with good form. We want to stay as neutral as possible. And whenever possible, we want to be able to do things that we have a proficient skill at. And I think that goes a long, long way in terms of having training be a protective mechanism and not actually lead us to pain and injuries. Because there's nothing worse than that. Somebody's in the gym, they're trying to be healthy, they're trying to get strong, they're reading, they're learning, and they go in and they get injured and they go, this is impossible. You know, the thing that we need to be protecting is people's momentum. We need to be protecting their sustainability moving forward in a physical practice. And I think that just toggling it back a little bit and being a little bit more nuanced with form, technique, And obviously the principles of exercise science and programming, frequency, intensity, volumes, those things still matter today.
And I think a simple concept with form is two things. One is if we get people very fearful about deviating from some arbitrary idea of standard form, perfect form, then that fear alone can sensitize them to pain, right? Maybe injury. Two, I think it's really important that we actually have a robustness and resilience to movement that varies within a range versus this arbitrary ideal. Because again, all the tissues, joint tissue, everything develops a tolerance to moving in those ways. Because if you think about anybody who participates in any athletic endeavor, sports, right? You don't get this perfectly sanitized movement pattern the way that you can usually create in the gym. You have forces acting on you. Think football, hockey, soccer, anything, basketball, anything that's got a bit of contact. You're playing tennis or pickleball. You're moving in a wide variety of planes and motions very quickly, reactively, in a way that you simply won't be in the gym. If you're not prepared to handle stress and force on your body, joints, in that scenario, because you've taught yourself, hey, if I deviate from this even a little bit, I'm going to break, then you're training yourself to be extremely fragile.
I think that we've gotten this wrong in our industry because there's some loud voices out there that are like the anti-fragile voices. And this, with incomplete information and 15-second sound bites on Instagram, has done everyone a disservice in terms of injury prevention and injury risk mitigation and training. You know, when we look at acquiring a new motor skill, it's not different than any other skill that you would do in your life versus being in a gym. You go through different stages of learning. You're really going to suck at a cognitive stage of learning because you've never done something before. But we can't just say, hey, your body's super fucking resilient, bro. You know, just hoist this deadlift. I know you've never seen a deadlift before. This is day one. Let's go for a 1 RM max. That's essentially what we're soundbiting out there to people, and that's just lacking common sense. You know, obviously, as you get a little bit more skilled, when you get into that associative phase and the autonomous phase, of course, that's when we can start to go, hey, we can push it a little bit here because we've been able to withstand the stress in a strategic overload, and we have learned enough to be able to stabilize and to be able to structure your training to the point where this is an intelligent decision to continue to push and to be able to buffer that range of neutrality a little bit more. But what we shouldn't be doing for people is saying, hey, you're fragile. Don't lift. Don't do anything. Leave that to the physicians that are really wrecking a lot of the momentum that the fitness industry has in terms of strength training. But we also shouldn't be like, hey, go do whatever the hell you want because your body's robust. I've trained clients that have been hurt in the gym. I'm not immune to that. I know you have as well. And I know every trainer has as well. And it's the worst. So I think that there are certain things that are preventable. There are certain things that are common sense in terms of the way that we try to put our clients in the best possible position to train long-term. And then there's other things that just lack that common sense and usually lack the experience to know that, hey, there are certain things that are going to line up better for somebody's long-term health than others. And it's always a risk to reward balance with every single decision that we make inside the gym and out. But I think that when we do develop skills, motor skills in the gym, it's essentially a rehearsal to start to program our autopilot of our movement. The way you move becomes the way you move. And it's practice. And the more varied that we can get with that practice and the more loading we can put on that practice and the more diverse we can get with that practice, we're going to be able to go in and actually have a more reactive ability to protect ourselves when the challenge comes.
I'll bring this around a little bit because I think this is worth saying. So there's messaging from part of the industry. And I like this part. And I think they're very evidence-based, but they'll say that there's no relationship between form and injury risk. Now, that's something that, bell curve data sets may suggest broadly across the population, but we're still dealing with individuals. And I do actually believe overwhelmingly that load management, the combination of load, intensity, volume is a really big thing when you combine it against someone's, sleep and a lot of other factors we absolutely know have a very strong relationship with injury risk. But having coached a lot of people, I can tell you that there are some people based on their anthropometry, the way that they're built, and their injury history, which is another big one, that certain type of exercises or positions that they get themselves into are uncomfortable. Now, is there always a one-to-one relationship between pain and injury? No, but there's a relationship. And so, yes, for certain people, like there's another argument that, you don't have to have a neutral spine when it comes to things like deadlifting. There's complexity there, right? But I find it's a place I like to start from and then go to the individual. If I have someone who has a great deal of tolerance and skill, you mentioned earlier, in bending over and picking up objects with a rounded back, they tend to still brace pretty well. They've built up a tolerance to the load over time. That's load management. Then guess what? That's actually a perfectly safe activity. But exactly as you said, if you have someone who's relatively inexperienced, grabs a heavy barbell, is trying to near 1 rep max, they do not have control. Their body is not organized the way that they pull it. And then they are pulled out of a brace position. I think that is a way to increase your injury risk.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I fully agree with that. And the hard thing about quote unquote science-based practicing today, it's kind of fucking bullshit. It's kind of bullshit. I believe in all of the principles, but in the real world, that is not how people are coming in. When we're talking about the term load management, imagine managing load for your personal training clients. Imagine doing that and being able to hold all the variables together so they're in their best possible position so you can callous the system. Strength coaches in the NBA can't even load manage. We have NFL players that can't load manage. That's their job. And we're still having difficulty with the concept of load management. It doesn't mean it's not a real thing. It means that it's far more complex and it's far harder to make tangible for the average person out there working a job, having kids, going on trips, and not being a professional trainee. So when you think about these concepts, I believe all of them are valid and true, but the transition into reality is really lagging many times. But we're looking at having, again, these polarizing, shiny objects in our industry. We have, hey, does your front side of your knee really friggin' hurt? Does that thing kill you every time you squat or lunge? You know what? Let's just push that bad boy forward tomorrow, even though it's a hot knee, and let's get on our toes, and let's go terminal knee flexion, and let's go as much anterior translation as possible. People are out there doing that because they're like, oh, if I want bulletproof knees over toes are the only way. Hold on, there's no load management in that scenario. It's all or nothing. And then we look at, hey, I just hurt my lower back. Well, you need to be doing Jefferson curls. You still have a hot lower back. You can barely stand up straight, but you think you need to go in with a 25-pound dumbbell and do segmental flexion to extension. And it's just inappropriate at that time and place. So I think that the nuance is that where are you? What is your skill level? What's your injury history? Because as you alluded to, previous injury is the number one predictor of future injury. That is locked in for the last 25 years of literature. We need to just take a little bit of a step back and look at, hey, what can I do today that will 100% put me in a great position to train, elicit a desired training effect? And then what can I do today and tomorrow to be able to rebuild these patterns, to be able to rebuild my confidence and be able to recallous the system a little bit more in a step-by-step approach from building it from the ground back up. The thing to do if you got hurt deadlifting is not to go in and deadlift exactly the same way and just try to load manage. It's to probably get stronger, probably get more skilled, and then progress up through a concentrated pyramid structure of where we can actually jump some exercise selections that you can make neural gains, you can make mechanical gains, and you can make brain gains in terms of your confidence and your emotions moving back in and moving beyond your pain.
Right. Let's have some fun. I pulled some quotes out of your media, and I always love anybody who follows you knows that you speak with conviction. Okay. So let's see. Let's start with this one. Quote, men should be training like women. Sorry, bros, not the other way around. More leg days, especially glutes, more mobility, more cardio. Talk to me about this.
Well, we grew up in the T Nation era. It was
bodybuilding magazines and Arnold era, brother.
Oh, you're a little, yeah. I mean,
I'm older than you.
You're a little bit older than me, but we grew up when training hard, being hardcore. I think that was the tagline on T Nation. It was like hardcore something. And it was like, if you're not just doing something to get super huge or super strong, you're basically not even training. And I think this bleeds into now the guys that are 20s, not 20s anymore, but 30s, 40s, 50s now. And they have this same like ego mentality and this bro building mentality of like, hey, I'm going to do the things at 45 that I was doing at 25 because that's when I was in the best shape of my life. And that turns into way too much ego lifting. It turns into way too much mirror muscles, chest, biceps, and abs. It leads to no cardio, little conditioning, mobility. Are you kidding me? And we're not going to get athletic and we're not going to do anything powerfully. We're just going to go like we're fucking Ronnie Coleman trying to go for the Olympia. And it's just kind of silly when we say that, but I would challenge anyone to go into any gym across North America today and look around and see what a vast majority of the bros are doing. And they're doing exactly that. It's like a really poor man's powerlifting bodybuilding program meshed together with poor range of motion, poor form, huge amounts of load, a lot of rest periods on the phone, and the wondering why their shoulders, their lower backs, and their knees are killing them. So that's the one side of the spectrum. That's like our stereotypical look at what the guys are making mistakes with. But then you have the women. The women have notoriously always been gravitated towards things that were more cardiovascular based, things that were more mobility based. We're thinking about yoga and Pilates. And all of a sudden, I would say the last 5 to 7 years, we've had this like really exciting era of women moving into resistance training. And it's not like all the Instagram pages will say, it's the biggest trend in fitness. Women are strength training, and they use strength training like everyone's just going in and powerlifting in the racks. That's definitely not the case. But what women are doing today, a little bit differently than a decade ago, is they are using dumbbells. They're definitely using kettlebells. They're dabbling with the barbell. They're in machines, and they know the power of resistance training. So when that person goes from cardio, mobility base, and starts strength training, they have a more well-rounded approach to fitness with more well-rounded structure of what they would be doing across a training week than the guy that's super resistant to never give up on putting those 2.5 pound plates on the barbell every single week until they PR or ER. So at Pain Free Performance, I'm really a big fan of like a blend of both, a blend of everything, middle ground on almost every topic in health and fitness and training. And that means that everyone should be training 6 physical characteristics, no matter who you are, guys, girls, whatever. You should be training power, strength, hypertrophy, cardio and conditioning, mobility, and athleticism. That is what the research, and that's also what Anecdote will line up to being a well-rounded human being that can move and function and hopefully be more pain-free for life than the counterpart that's just going in and blasting 1 or 2 of these physical characteristics.
As I've gotten older, and I'll make fun of that, I'm 47 now, my training has moved gradually away from what you described. It's still got aspects of that. There's still plenty of
Me too.
I am not offended by that whatsoever. It's good to be reminded. But I'll do things like power skips to warm up my lower body days. I like that a lot. Had some knee issues, and longtime listeners would know I'd had a ACL sprain a year and a half ago or so. It took a long time to really get better. Something about deep flexion, but deep knee flexion, but single leg press. I love it. It feels good. You mentioned putting the smaller plates on. Shout out to one of my sponsors, RP Strength, the hypertrophy app. It forces me to I've never in my life ever put 2.5 or 5 pound plates on leg press. That was sacrilege before, but now I will do things like that. And honestly, I find that those smaller increases actually feel better and add up week to week. I do way more zone 2 cardio. I'll sit on a recumbent bike with a Kindle or a book, and I'll read and I'll just chill there for half an hour. And I always feel better when I'm consistently doing it. So I've allowed myself to, shift as I've gotten older. I still love the hard and heavy stuff.
Yeah.
But I've also biased more and more towards machines that just seem to feel better. And as much as there's a lot of argument over barbell lifts or whatever, I have lots of clients and some older who still like barbells. They work great for them, for those individuals. There's a lot of other clients that I don't. And for me, I do a lot less barbell stuff directly myself. It doesn't feel as good anymore.
I think for my clients, we've always adhered to kind of the West Side barbell recommendation for overall training volume throughout the week. And that is sub 10% of a barbell lift for your main lift of all the training volume that you're driving throughout a training week. And I was like, when I first heard that, I was like, dang, The people that love the barbell the most are using the barbell the least because they know the power of its application, but they also know that we need to build up muscle armor, or we need to build up that strength armor in order to get the most out of this tool. It's sprinkling it in for the maximal benefit while minimizing any risk by doing other things that just feel better for the body or have a more direct correlation towards another ancillary goal that is not just pure barbell power or strength. And I think that you said I've shifted into this style of training. I think you evolved. I think that you saw a need and you continuously evolve as our needs grow. And that is what a vast majority of people are going to do as they get older, or as they get banged up, or as they get more experienced in wanting to really chase down what it is to be healthy. And what it is to be healthy is having movement health. And we have to have all these different components into our program. But it doesn't mean that we can't use machines. It doesn't mean that we can't sit on the recumbent bike in zone 2. We just have to weight vest, walk up a flight of stairs. We can do all these things in many different ways. The key is that we just have a checklist of all the things that we know are going to help us here today, but also compound long term. And we're able to just check those things off each and every week. So we have a minimal effective dose of a well-rounded plan that can adopt to almost anything. And it can stand up to any challenge that you'll have in your life. I think that has been my biggest change with my training over the last 5 to 7 years, is that I need to be more well-rounded. I always practice what I preach in the models that I teach, but I need to be able to be recoverable. I need to feel good after a training session. And it is absolutely a non-negotiable to be pain-free and to be able to move well, because I'm at the point in my life where I'm throwing 500 pitches of batting practice to my son in baseball season. I'm running around 7,000 steps at basketball practice in basketball season. I'm going all over the place, coaching, teaching, traveling, and I need to be at my best and I need to feel good. And I think a lot of people, when you take back the emotions of the gym or the emotions of a particular exercise or how we compare ourselves to our previous best, we simply are training to make our life better. We're training to feel good. And hopefully that stuff compounds for long enough to bring us to, our twilight years being strong and being resilient.
This episode is brought to you by Just Bite Me Meals. I work long days and I won't compromise my client experience or sacrifice my workout, sleep, or nutrition. So I needed a quality and reliable meal prep service so I could save time on cooking and shopping and have more time for the stuff that matters. Net out the cost of groceries and the service isn't as much as you might think, and regular impulsive food delivery apps, eating out, that costs way more anyway. I get more meal variety and less dishes to clean, and I've been referring clients to Just Bite Me Meals for a long time, and I recently started ordering myself. Food is great. The beef brisket tacos are my favorite so far, and there's a lot of menu choice. Your calories and macros are listed. The portions are great. You can order custom meals. They deliver to your door, or you can pick up from their storefront. And I'm sorry to listeners outside of Alberta, but Just Bite Me Meals is currently just in Edmonton, Calgary, Grand Prairie, and Fort McMurray. Ordering from Just Bite Me Meals made my life easier instantly. And you can get 10% off on all your orders using my code, Andrew Coates Fitness, all caps, on their website. That's Andrew Coates Fitness, all capitals, or go to the link and the code in the show notes.
All right, next one. Quote, the average American lifespan is 76.4 years. Now, I didn't look it up, but I think Canada's higher. Sorry. Look, shady.
You guys are high. You can't get your mail, though.
Yeah. Your book is in the mail, right? We have a postal strike as of time of recording. Middle age isn't 50. It's 38. Oof. What does that mean for everybody?
I think it means that we need to start training smarter, quicker. And the reason that we go out and we do so much education and we're on podcasts and we're writing articles and being able to publish books is that we've all made the mistakes. You and I have made a lot of mistakes, and we're proud to be able to share those mistakes because we then evolve and we learn from them so we can pay it forward to everyone else that we're working with or anyone else who wants to gain knowledge from our education. But I think that many times we are making the same mistakes over and over in later years today, and it's harder to battle back from that as the age gets older and older. So somebody that learns to train smart at 30 is going to be a better position than they are at 40. Doesn't mean that the 70-year-old can't start training smart today and gain benefits. That's not what I'm saying. But I think that we don't have to be like this big martyr out there We don't have to tear our ACL. We don't need to blow out our shoulder on bench to go, hey, I think there's a more well-rounded training approach for me so I can continue to do the thing that I love to do, which is train. So I think that long-term, we need to just look at the start to health is as soon as we can possibly get focused on that. And we don't have to make these mistakes early on, because the longer that we can train smart, the longer that we can start to be healthy, the bigger that health buffer zone that we have. So when we go and we need that health buffer zone, boom, we get hit with a hard diagnosis. Boom, we have a freak accident falling off a curb at the subway, and we do tear our Achilles. We have this buffering zone and all this strength and this resilience, mentally, emotionally, physically, that we've pent up, so we can actually battle back against it a little bit better. But I see that people, especially everyone's a 40-plus-year-old fitness coach now. Hey, are you 40 and you want to get in shape and you're a dad of 3? Like, come and coach with me. Well, maybe we should have been doing something a little bit smarter at 30, maybe 25. A lot of the athletes that I'm working with, they'll leave professional sports in their mid to late 20s, and all of a sudden they find it out really quick. They're like, man, I have a lot of stress on my system. I need to start doing things differently right now so I can go in and I can throw batting practice to my son, who is now 2 years old. I need to start doing things differently because stress on the system is a real thing. But the stress in our lifestyle is not getting any lower. We are at a high stress lifestyle today. And I think that if we can mitigate that stress by using training as a net positive for our lifestyle, if we can do that quicker, that is going to be the key. But 38 is what the post says. I would challenge that many of the physical characteristics are lost due to normalized aging starting at about 31 or 32. And this is obviously a statistic without strength training, without prime nutrition, without sleep and stress management associated. So if you were to go out and do nothing, most likely you can make it until about your 30th birthday, and you're going to start to degrade at about 31.
Well, and I don't know the exact numbers, but I think that even by 30, we're starting to net lose muscle and bone density, that we're on the downward arc of that, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yes,
And
you'll lose anywhere from 6 to 9% per decade after the age of 30 in terms of your bone mineral density and also in terms of your muscle mass. And at the same time, we're going to be averaging about 0.9 to 1.1 pounds of fat per year that we're gaining. So we're moving the opposite direction in terms of a body comp. We're getting fatter and we're getting weaker and we're losing muscle. That doesn't sound like a good recipe for trying to turn things around at 40.
And we lose strength and explosiveness at an even faster rate than we lose explosiveness, power, faster than we lose strength and muscle. And I know there was a statistic being waved around. I don't remember the number, the age, but there's a very high percentage of people that never sprint again past a certain age. And I think it was something in their late 20s or even around 30, which is kind of spooky when you think about it. And even I've noticed that, like, my physical capacity at 47 to jump up and do things I haven't done for many years is very different. My confidence in just jumping up and doing it versus, I remember being 18 and playing high school basketball and what I could do. And it's like, oh yeah, that'll always be there. I look at people like our friend Luca Hosfar is a good example of who still maintains, plays basketball. Actually, my younger brother, he still plays ball all the time. So he's actually done a really good job of maintaining that skill. But it's the proverbial, if you use it or lose it, right?
Yeah, it's like the 40-year-old virgin. Is it true if you don't use it, you lose it? Yes, that's true. And is that a real question? Power is one of those things that tends to be the first physical characteristic that is lost due to quote unquote normalized aging. But interestingly enough, the cardiovascular system and then also our explosive power potentiation, those are the two physical characteristics that tend to bounce back the quickest. So we can see the most amount of gains in those characteristics versus something like strength or muscle that takes weeks, if not months, to be able to put notable mass on or to have huge strength metrics be able to be notable. So we're thinking about having a huge amount of low-hanging fruit in terms of moving athletically, moving powerfully. And it's not just power cleans and it's not just vertical depth jumps. We're talking about anything that's moving faster than you're already moving today. You said that you were doing some power skips. That's awesome. Skipping is super great. And when we think about having that be athletic, also be explosive, you can vary it. it's not an all or nothing thing when it comes to managing these characteristics, especially power. It's moving faster and being able to utilize maybe tools that are associated with more power production. You know, the things that we use at Pain Free Performance, we love kettlebells, we love landmine, and we love bands. We're able to have a protective mechanism just because of the mechanics of those specific tools, and we're able to display power in a controlled setting. So it's like, man, it doesn't just have to be this old school, very dogmatic one line approach to power. It could be anything that you are doing already that you're moving faster than where you previously moved.
And I love simple things like throwing and rotational throws, slams, and medicine balls. They're very hard to get hurt doing shit like that. If you got access to a sled, I would say you can gradually or moderately increase the speed you're pushing a sled. There's a lot of resistance there. I don't think if someone hasn't sprinted in 20 years, they should go out and do a high volume of full speed sprinting. I think that dramatically increases your chance of rupturing an Achilles. Okay. So don't do that. Build up your capacity and tolerance to it. Okay. That's important.
So the most physically injurious sport in the world is running. And the most acute injuries happen with sprinting. And if you want to look at any physical activity out there, on any sport out there, it's actually pickup basketball. So it's like, yeah, what do all those things have in common? It's people that are not prepared to go in and move explosively, acceleration and deceleration, and be able to have a huge amount of ballistic nature in their explosiveness, moving, whether it be down the court, whether it be moving up a hill, or just reaching that hamstring length and then ground contact for the first time in 2 decades. So there's an interesting thing about sprinting. It's like sprinting's another one of these things like deadlifts. It's like, man, is it bad? Is it good? Like, what are your thoughts on sprinting? It's like, I always say deadlifting is statistically speaking, the most injurious of all 3 of the power lifts. It just is, that's what the stats will say. It doesn't mean that it's bad. It's actually the number one thing that can protect you from long-term lower back pain and irritation. So you're like,
Good.
well, what the heck? Same thing with sprinting. Sprinting is probably the most natural display of power that we have in the human body. It's extraordinary. If you watch world-class sprinters like Andrew Coates go out there and sprint, you're like, wow, it's a thing of beauty. But if you look at somebody sprinting for the first time, their motor skill's not quite there, but their want to go and exceed some of their range of motions, some of their ability to pick up quick in terms of their tension, it's just not quite there. And that's what tends to run them into some problems. But like a return to run situation should probably be happening before a return to sprint situation. Because the gait mechanics are very similar, we're simply just toggling up or toggling down the intensity like any other exercise on earth. But that's one thing that I do see is like sprinting is hot, weighted walking is hot right now. And I see people go out and sprint, and then they end up into the physical therapist's office or the physician's office wondering what the heck happened because I heard that this was so good for my metabolic health.
Too much, too fast. I wonder if there are any statistics yet on pickleball injury rates. I haven't seen them because if you think about it, and again, like I don't have data here, but I'm thinking intuitively, what do we have? We have a very accessible sport that is rising rapidly in popularity. And again, look, I'll sort of couch the CrossFit argument. Statistically speaking, CrossFit injury rates are actually not higher than other strength sports, recreationally, et cetera. Right? They're actually pretty low, per injuries per 1,000 hours. I think they're in like the 3 to 4 range, which is actually low. The running ones, I think, are in the teens to 30, depending on the nature of the running, right? If I remember the data correctly. But at the same time, anecdotally, we hear about a lot of injuries with CrossFit. Well, what's the mechanism there? People jumping in, doing too much too fast, right? So I can imagine pickleball being a really accessible place for, people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and upwards that their friends are doing and jumping in and probably just overdoing it. And they may not have the movement qualities because what happens if someone who used to be athletic suddenly decides to lunge for or chase after a shot moving faster than the tissue is ready for? Thoughts?
For sure. Okay. I was going to mention this, but I am going to mention this now that you said pickleball. So 3 days ago, I went over to my next door neighbor's house. They're in their 70s, and she's in a boot right now from Achilles surgery. She didn't do anything super awesome. She hurt it walking a dog. but she's in a boot, and I gave her the pain-free performance book. And I was like, hey, look at this page for this page for this. You go through this, read the thing if you're really bored because you're in a boot. And then her brother was in town from North Carolina, and he shows me a scar on his ankle. And he said, 9 months ago, I went and played pickleball for the first time in my life. And within the first 5 minutes, I ruptured my Achilles. Different than my sister's Achilles injury, but I ruptured my Achilles. And there's so many of those stories that you hear that you're like, there has to be something to this. Like, I'm definitely not waiting for like the next like peer-reviewed study to come out about pickleball injury rates. Like, we know it to be true because it is the perfect situation for what you said, to be able to do too much, too soon, in a population that simply hasn't been able to be exposed to this level of intensity, this level of fatigue, or this movement skill. So we see this all the time. And then just like common sense would say, hey, if you hadn't been playing tennis for a certain reason and you're really gravitating towards pickleball, why would that be? The requisites are the same in both sports. To say that they aren't is just negligent. You know, I think it's just a little bit more acute because of the speed of the game and the amount of hits that you have in pickleball versus tennis. But if we're avoiding tennis and we're going into pickleball with the people that are avoiding tennis, we need to ask you, why are you avoiding tennis in the first place? And hopefully trying to train towards that if your goal is to be able to step on the court and not get injured. But I've in Madison, Wisconsin, of all places, I probably have 6 or 7 people that have had quite catastrophic pickleball injuries over the last year or two. And these are people that I know are part of my community. Luckily, they're not any of my clients, but they're things that you would just like not believe. A builder that I'm friends with, he lost his left eye in a pickleball accident. And it's like stuff like that. You're just like, all right, I think the statistics are going to be high when it comes to injury rates.
And our goal here is not to scare people out of pickleball. Oh, if you think about
it is. Pickleball book is it's over my book right now on the Amazon list. And I'm very offended by that. It's pickleball. That's the name of the book. And hey, we're coming after you guys. We're just kidding. Like, go out and play it. It's an awesome way to be able to use new skills and definitely train power.
I think so as well. And I think the underlying message for all this is just really ease in, prepare your tissue for these activities. Obviously, the book will be a much deeper dive. But if you think about pickleball, I think a lot of people think, well, it's much more accessible on a skill basis. But there's 2 different parts to the skill of pickleball. There is the hitting the ball side of pickleball, which dramatically scales down the skill level versus tennis. But the movement around the court, it's the same skill set as tennis. So what you're thrown into is the illusion that, wait a minute, this is a lot easier. And in one aspect it is, but on another side, you still actually have the same movement demands in theory. I mean, we're not talking about Rafael Nadal and Djokovic and the super elite, I'll date myself, Steffi Graf, obviously Serena Williams, right? The GOATs. But, you still are going to be chasing balls around, moving rapidly in many dimensions behind you, sideways. And even if you're someone who's regularly in the gym, doing your squats and lunging, everything is in one plane, sagittal plane, right? I don't like using the plane words because that sometimes confuses people, but everything is like moving forward, back, or it's like your feet are mostly straight forward. There's not necessarily a lot of lateral movement and loading. And all of a sudden, what are you doing when you're playing pickleball, tennis? There's a lot of lateral movement and a lot of lunging that you just simply haven't been doing. So guys, easy, just please, okay?
I mean, dare I say it's functional though, right? So when you're talking about what is functional training and what's a functional activity, anytime that you start to delve into lateralization and rotation and the combination of those 2 things, and then you're using unilateral based approaches at the lower body and the upper body, that is going to be hugely quote unquote functional. Like, I learned this one personally the hard way. Not a whole lot of people know this, but I used to actually coach players on the women's professional tennis tour all across the world. And I tell a little bit of anecdote in the book in one of the first chapters of, me just sitting and watching my players hit for 3, 4, 5 hours a day. And then it would be my job to go in and do a little bit of physio with them and definitely do their strength and conditioning work with them. But all of a sudden, like, I found myself as like a decoy on the court because like there's only so many hours you can just stand there and do nothing. And my player was playing doubles at the time and singles. And she was like a really awesome player. So me being me, I'm like, oh, I can move really well. I'm a great athlete. I can do all this stuff. My hand-eye coordination's off the charts. I'm going to go in and I'm going to just be the decoy for the practice squad. And I remember the first day after doing that for about an hour, my adductors and my obliques were absolutely ripped to the bone. I was like, holy shit. Like, what did I do? I was like trying to think about what I did in my training session the day before. Like, oh, maybe it was that flight that I did. No, you idiot. It was you going in and rapidly decelerating in lateral and rotation-based planes over and over and over. And I was a decoy. I wasn't even hitting the ball. And it was like, that was super humbling to me. And I think it's like, it's experiences like that in the real time with your body and your coaching career that you're like, wow, I need to open up my mind into what I think the human body is capable of in terms of its stress, and also how we can make this stress a little bit more well-rounded than just a hugely sagittal and bilateral dominant training program.
All right. In 5 minutes or less, your life's work codified into your new book. What does that feel like?
It feels awesome because there were times over the last 5 years where I didn't think that we were going to be able to continue on with pain-free performance. Not to make it a big sob story, but, late into 2021, 2022, really when I saw you the last in Orlando, Florida, I was having some really big health issues. I was having some GI issues, and that didn't stop me from going out and teaching and speaking and doing all the things that I was doing. But it all really just came to a head in late 2022. I was teaching a course in Chicago. I had my entire staff there, which I was super excited about. And I had my GI issues at the time. I contracted COVID in Chicago, and then Lux had it. I had full body poison ivy. And I had all three of these things simultaneously. And I taught my course in Chicago, and I laid down between the segments of the course, and I drove myself home the 90 minutes to Madison, and I checked myself into the hospital. 6 weeks later, I was in surgery. And the 3 to 4 months after that, I was back to square one. And it was at that point in time that I was approached to, unknowingly from the publishing house, dealing with some medical issues, that, hey, we want to bring pain-free performance to life. And I was so down and out. I didn't know what our next move was. I was just trying to walk to the mailbox, let alone squat 500 pounds. I was like, you know what? This is the perfect time, because you know what? If this doesn't live on, then it's going to be something that I can pass on to my son. I can pass on to our pain-free performance alumni. This is something I need to do. And on spot, I said, yep, let's do it. I had Glenn Cordoza, who is my co-author, an absolute OG in the fitness industry, come on and work on this project with me. We thought it was going to take about 12 to 14 months. It ended up taking almost 3 years. But in terms of being able to hold that in my hands and know the amount of dedication and effort and time and energy and sheer willpower that went into creating this resource, it's something that I've never been more proud of. And I think it will come to a full circle moment when I'm able to actually have it out and have it into people's hands like yourselves and all the people that have gone in and ordered it, and being able to have it circulate. Like right now, there's a handful of people that have the books, and our family is one of those people. And it's special because I can share it with my wife. I can share it with my son. The book is dedicated to my son. I did that right when I was going through the shit. And I think that being able to celebrate what it is that really took almost 2 decades to get here, and a decade of education with pain-free performance, it means the most to me, because it was to serve my coaches, it was to serve the community, and it was also to expand how pain-free performance can be used above and beyond just personal training or strength coaching cert, and be able to hit enthusiasts that are just looking to feel better and looking to train smarter and looking to be healthy. And at the end of my career, if I can have even like a tiny bit of a needle jump up in that realm, it will be all worth it. But it feels awesome, man. I have it sitting right next to me.
There we
This
go.
thing, holding it still feels awesome.
Everybody who's only audio, video people saw it. So the audio people, guys, go and search for it. Funny, you never know what's going on behind the scenes of someone's health. This episode follows. So my previous episode was a really interesting, rare one. If everybody's familiar with JP Tremblay, better known as Julian from the Trailer Park Boys, like an iconic Canadian comedy troupe and show. But he also tells some, just escalating health issues that really had him not dissimilar to what you described. So he tells that story then, and just the importance of making lifestyle changes and getting his life back. So congratulations on the book. Everybody can find you at Dr. John Rusin, Dr. John Rusin. What else do you want to send people to? Obviously, you want them to go check out the book.
Yeah, they can check out the book anywhere books are sold. The Amazon link is probably going to be the most efficient. Check that out over there. And yeah, it's been a pleasure, man. I appreciate you having me on again. I think it's been 7 years since we've done this. And yeah, man, it feels good to be back on the show.
I know the original would have been nearly 7 years ago because I recently hit 400 episodes across 8 years. And you were on one other time. You know, I don't memorize the numbers, but guys, if you really are interested and you want to scroll back, John's been on a couple times, and so have members of your team. My good friend Logan Dubé.
Yeah,
I'm overdue getting Cliff Harsky back on. I love Cliff. I saw that he recently was recording for the Coach 'Em Up podcast.
Yeah.
So, and I was
down in
down
Austin doing the functional kettlebell training course, and he hit up Tim. It was a good show.
Tim was on recently, and I was in Austin just a few weeks ago, and I also recorded an episode of Coach 'Em Up, which is not yet out, but I'm excited for that one. That's really cool.
Awesome.
But I'm glad to see Cliff getting some dues as well. So, guys, everybody go follow John, go check out the book. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate all you guys. Thanks, John.
Thank you.